The issue of climate change is one of the most publicized and widely discussed social issues. Initiatives to go green have found their way into every industry imaginable, and every year the threat of global catastrophe seems to be nearer and nearer. It is very rare that a social issue has the reach to seemingly affect every person on every corner of the globe, which is in part what makes the debate so widely accessible. To no surprise, the call for change of how we treat our Earth has overwhelming support. Observable evidence such as global temperature rise, warming oceans, retreating glaciers, and sea level rise can all be linked to the Earth's climate change. Despite the seemingly overwhelming support for change, there is still a debate to be had when considering climate change. Now, the debate on climate change does not have to do with whether or not the Earth is indeed warming. At this point, there is overwhelming evidence that the Earth is warming, and both sides of the climate argument agree on this. The argument rather has to deal with the question of whether or not human activity is affecting the rate at which the Earth is warming. The two sides of this argument will be referred to as the consensus, who believe that yes, human activity is causing climate change, and the minority, who believe that we are not causing much, if any, damage to the Earth's atmosphere, and the warming is due to a natural cycle. Both sides of the debate have convincing evidence to support their claim, and I'll present three pieces of evidence that I find to be most convincing from each side of the debate. The consensus view points to multiple different meteorological studies and how they have changed and evolved as we have modernized. One of these models that the consensus view uses quite frequently is the statistics of heat waves. Heat waves are occurring more frequently and for much longer than in the past. The consensus argues that this drastic increase in these metrics is due to human activity, and to support their claim, there is evidence that cities, as places buzzing with emissions and industry, are the epicenter of these extended heat waves. Take a look at this graph, which depicts both the frequency of heat waves in the US, as well as the average heat wave season length. In the 1960s, the United States averaged 2 heat waves per year. In the 2010s, that number is up to 6. Furthermore, the heat wave season is currently 47 days longer than it was in the 1960s. The drastic difference in heat wave frequency and length, as well as the concentration of these extended heat waves around urban areas, support the argument that human activity is having an impact on the temperature. Another piece vital to the consensus views argument has to do with what is described as the greenhouse effect. Human activities such as the burning of fossil fuels are releasing CO2 into the atmosphere, and due to this, the levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide haven't been as high as they are now in 800,000 years. The annual greenhouse gas index, or the AGGI, is a metric that measures the capacity of the Earth's atmosphere that can trap heat due to greenhouse gases. As you can see, the AGGI has raised 49% since 1980, and carbon dioxide has accounted for 80% of this increase. An increase in the AGGI means that more heat is being trapped in the atmosphere now than before, and this in turn is making the Earth's temperature heat up. A popular claim from the minority view states that the Earth has gone through multiple ice age periods with no human cause, and that the recent climate change could just be one of Earth's natural cycles. The consensus agrees that yes, the Earth's temperature does naturally fluctuate, but this is no explanation for how high the CO2 and temperature are at this time. We are currently in an interglacial period, when the temperature and CO2 naturally rise, but given that the current temperature is the highest it has been in 800,000 years, and the atmospheric CO2 is 40% higher than it has been in that period, this is of massive concern. These large bumps in temperature also occur over centuries. Our current metrics are increasing disproportionately quick. The temperature change during an interglacial period can take centuries, while our temperature is rising in merely decades. The consensus view relies largely on models. These models that depict and predict things, such as global temperature, are at the basis of the consensus's argument. The minority view often points at these climate models, as they are called, are often drastically wrong. When conducting a detailed study of the accuracy of climate models, John Christie, a distinguished meteorologist from the University of Alabama Huntsville, discovered how incorrect these climate models can be. Christie and his team compiled 102 climate models that the IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, rely on. The red line on the graph depicts the average predicted temperature from these IPCC models, and the blue and green lines depict the actual temperature. As you can see, the predicted temperatures are significantly higher than the actual. The minority often points to these fallacies in the consensus view on climate models. These are models that the consensus relies on, and they are often flat out wrong. As I stated, one of the main claims of the consensus is that the rise in atmospheric CO2 is the main cause of the Earth's rising temperatures. This claim is often blindly agreed with by the general public and rarely questioned. Many scientists in the minority view believe that this may not exactly be the case. They argue that because all CO2 that we are burning from fossil fuels was once in the atmosphere, how harmful can it really be? They argue that the optimum level of CO2 for plant life is actually 4 to 5 times higher than what is found in our atmosphere. In 2016, a study published in the Nature Climate Change Journal found that from a quarter to half of our Earth's vegetated lands have shown significant greening because of the rising CO2 levels. One of the more popular statistics the consensus cites states that 97% of scientists agree that humans are driving the climate crisis. But this statistic is rarely cited or validated. An early study of what percent agreed with the IPCC's proposition that humans were causing rapid climate change was written by Naomi Oreskes, and the study stated that 75% of nearly 1,000 papers she reviewed on the question of climate change agreed with the consensus proposition. Upon further review, Professor Klaus Martin Schulte found that only 45% of the papers from Oreskes' study validated the IPCC's claim of what causes climate change. The paper cited with the 97% statistic is a study published by John Cook in 2013. Upon review of the study, one can read that 77,930 of the papers included in the study took no firm position at all, which drops this 97% to only 32.6%. If the consensus is lying about the metrics of scientists that support its side, what else could they be lying about? As you can see, both sides of the climate debate have convincing arguments. The climate debate is something that affects nearly every facet of our lives, and I hope that more meaningful discourse can be had.